Of you here will be upstairs by the year 2063. But our contribution, perhaps you do not know what I mean upstairs, not up. You will be with the Lord himself. But the most important thing is that Africans are now beginning to see beyond the next election. Because part of our problem in Africa has been that we plan in 5-year circles. We don't have a grand agenda, but now we have a grand agenda. And if you look at the 7 pillars of Africa Agenda 2063, everything is covered. Health is covered. Research and science is covered. Climate change is covered. Women's participation is covered. Democracy and governance is covered. The arts and the culture are covered so that Africa can become a serious player in the international agenda. As we speak.
Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you're doing well wherever you are today. So Professor PLO Lumumba, as always, he always has something to say about Africa. And true, it's important that there is always something to say about Africa and the future of Africa, how Africa will run. You know what I'm saying? Just the other day, we found the new president Bassirou Diomaye Faye. Yeah, one of the vibrant presidents that we are having today in Africa. And just last week, he was accepted as Senegal's African president. You know, PLO Lumumba is going to address some things which are important for we Africans, for we black people. So I want us to stay tuned as we watch this video and also learn some things from it, because we keep on forgetting. And the more we forget is for mostly our detrimental as Africans and people with African descent across the continent. So watch this video and then let's come back. I'll be saying something in the middle of the video. I hope you follow along with me. So let's watch.
We'll elect our presidents. We'll elect our governors. We'll have our ministers. That will happen, but they are not bothered. After we have elected them, you'll then see them sending their arrows ahead. You'll see Bill Gates come and meet your president. You'll see Tony Blair come and meet your president. You'll see Macron come and meet your president. You'll see all of them. And then they will never admit, but they'll be told, if you want money in agriculture, behave this way. If you want money in this area, behave this way. They will never tell that to the Chinese. They will never tell that to the Indians. They will never tell that to the Vietnamese. They will never tell that to the Koreans, but in Africa, they tell us. That is why, as I speak to you now, under this new scramble, the IMF and the World Bank are back, telling you who to hire in your universities, what to sell and what not to sell. It is a sad situation. So today, as I look at Africa in that new scramble, the Chinese are here. I hope that this institution was not built by the Chinese. The Turks are here. The British are here. The French are here. The Qataris are here. The Americans are here. This time round, they are so subtle that we don't even recognize them, but they control us. What are we going to do about it in order to develop? We must do something. And if we don't do that thing else, you who have been trained in this institution, you have traveled the world. You have traveled Nigeria. There are 2 things that you can do with your traveling. You can marvel. Says it is great in China. You can marvel. You can wonder or feel pain. I'm urging you to feel pain. To feel pain for the continent of Africa, and in your own way, when you go out there, go and do something about it, because it has also been demonstrated that it can be done. I've traveled across this continent and I've seen that development is possible. I was in Rwanda before 1994. I was in Rwanda in 1996. Genocide. 1 million dead. Its obituary written. Will never rise, they said. You go to Rwanda now. They are demonstrating that it can be done. Go to Kigali now. See what they are doing in the health sector in their own small way. See how they are collaborating in the area of mobile telephony in their own small way. It can be done. I've been to Botswana and I've seen what they are doing in their own small way. I've been to Mauritius, see what they are doing in their own small way. And they do not have the resources that other countries have. They do not have the resources that the Democratic Republic of Congo has. And I'm giving these examples to say that indeed it can be done, and it can be done within the continent of Africa. So what we must do is to begin to pull together. You know, as I've been sitting and listening, I was also struggling to have internet in this room. And every effort was being made to connect me to internet. And all those efforts failed. Why? Because we are in an era of the Internet of Things. We are in an era of nanotechnology. It cannot be right that in Africa's largest economy, in Nigeria, I do not have internet at an institution that deals with security. You get the point that I'm trying to make? It cannot be right. And I know why we don't have internet connectivity. It is because we are divided. We have 55 telephone access codes. Nigeria 234, Ghana 233, Kenya 254, Tanzania 255, Uganda 256, Zambia 260, Zimbabwe 263. How can we, in this day and age, you cross into Benin, you cross into Togo, you cross into Guinea-Bissau, you have a different internet connectivity. Why can't Africa have a single satellite and a single telephone code, so that when I travel from Mogadishu in Somalia to Dhaka in Senegal, like the Chinese do, like the Americans do, like the Indians do, we can have the same, because communication is critical to development. And I'm saying this, part of my agenda is to prick your conscience with live examples, that you may go out there irritated, but irritated to do the right thing. And I'm suggesting that indeed, when we talk about development, this is what we must do. But is Africa conscious of her state? Yes, Africa is conscious. This is what makes me happy. That after all these analysis, it appears to me that Africans have now recognized that going forward, we can only defeat the conspiracies, we can only have development as we are talking about it by working as a team. And that is why, beyond the Millennium Development Goals, beyond the Sustainable Development Goals, we as Africans under the aegis of the African Union do now have our grand vision of Africa Agenda 2063. And that Africa Agenda 2063, let me tell you, if we can fulfill it, many of you here will be upstairs by the year 2063. But our contribution, perhaps you do not know what I mean upstairs, not up. You will be with the Lord himself. But the most important thing is that Africans are now beginning to see beyond the next election. Because part of our problem in Africa has been that we plan in 5-year circles. We don't have a grand agenda, but now we have a grand agenda. And if you look at the 7 pillars of Africa Agenda 2063, everything is covered. Health is covered. Research and science is covered. Climate change is covered. Women's participation is covered. Democracy and governance is covered. The arts and the culture are covered so that Africa can become a serious player in the international agenda. As we speak now, we are not a serious player. You know, and I say this perhaps too often, but I must repeat it because it is important. I was looking at the GDP of Indonesia. The GDP of Indonesia this year, by the end of this year, will be 1.1 trillion United States dollars. Indonesia is the 17th largest economy in the world using all critical indices. He's amongst the G20. The population is about 200 million, just about Nigeria. Nigeria is a GDP give and take at the very best of 550 billion United States dollars. I'm looking at the power generation in Nigeria. At the very best, you generate about 17,000 megawatts. You lose about half of it, so that what goes into the grid is no more than 8,000 to 7,500 megawatts into your GDP. You are the biggest economy in the world. If you look at Iran, Iran generates 75,000 megawatts. So when we talk about industrialization, we are not even close to industrialization. Look at the diversity of power generation that you have. Most of it is hydro. You are not harnessing your solar. The Kainji dams and the other dams with climate change are going to dry. If you look at the major rivers, it means that you are going to be in trouble. You look at Zimbabwe now, for example, in power generation, 2,000 or give it 2,500 megawatts. The dams are drying, the Kariba is drying. So Africa must begin to think, even as we think of Africa Agenda 2063, because energy is the game changer. Without energy, all these generators you see everywhere in Nigeria must disappear for industrialization to come. And in many African countries, including my own country, Kenya, which generates, I think we have about slightly under 3,000 megawatts. You can't. So we must go to Inga Dam. We must begin to generate. We must go to Egypt at the Aswan High. Egypt is not doing very badly. We must go to Inga, produce 40,000 megawatts. We must go to Ethiopia, the Grand Renaissance Dam, produce 10,000 megawatts. Then we talk of industrialization. And why do I talk about industrialization? There are scientists here. It is only through industrialization that we are going to be manufacturers in all sectors. As it is now, 80% of what we consume in manufactured goods are from China. If China closes shop, we are dead. We are dead. So I'm thinking that Africa Agenda 2063 is a good thing, but we must work at it. I'm thinking that Africa Continental Free Trade Area is a good thing. Launched with the Secretariat in Accra, Ghana, a good thing. But how are we going to trade? How are we going to get somebody to drive a truck from Accra, Ghana to Juba or to Asmara in Eritrea without peace and security? So you can also see that peace and security is at the very heart of it. In the United States of America, and many of you are familiar, you can drive a truck from Florida through to Alberta in Canada, and it is safe. The roads are good, the security is there, I'm saying, therefore, that as we talk about development, we must think about development in a very comprehensive manner. We must ask ourselves how we govern. And I want to conclude my presentation to you by telling you that Africa must be very careful. We must be very careful because of lack of resources in Africa, I'm beginning to hear things that worry me. And because I'm a keen student of what is happening in Africa, I'm getting worried on a daily basis. The forces that divide us, the belief by many people in Africa that if we separated from our current countries, we would be better. It is beginning to happen. It is happening here in Nigeria. It is happening. I saw a letter last week addressed to the president of Zambia by a people in Zambia called Baroseland. And they are telling President Hakainde Hichilema that you remember in 1964 we had an agreement with the Lusaka government that the time has now come for Baroseland to become an independent country. Can you believe it? I hear people in Namibia saying, do you remember that there was a strip called the Caprivi Strip? I hear people in Ghana saying that you remember that in the Volta region we had a different country. I hear people in Zimbabwe saying that there should be a country called Mtuakazi. I hear people in South Africa, the South Africans, saying that we should have a separate country in the Western Cape. I hear people in Ethiopia saying we should have Tigray and Oromo. The centrifugal forces are there. And the only way to bring them in is to create a sense of belongingness. The people must feel that they are part of it. I remember the words of John Garang of South Sudan when he spoke in Khartoum. He told the Numeri government, we do not want to create a separate state, but make unity attractive. Make unity attractive, make Sudan attractive, make Khartoum attractive, because if you don't make it attractive, we will separate, and that will make us weaker. And I'm saying this because of this thing we call democracy. Democracy demands that people have a sense of belonging and that they believe that the country in which they live represents their interests and that deliberate efforts are being made in that regard. So, fellow Africans, I'm one who believes that this continent has a contribution to make. There is not a continent today that has the natural resources that this continent has. Not one. There is not a continent today that has a population as young as ours, which could be a resource. There is not a continent. There is not a continent today that has the resources in different diverse ways which can be harnessed. With a population of 1.4 billion, we are a potential market. But we must also warn ourselves. I am aware that you are talking about climate change. It is only through unity, therefore, that we can fight all these. Our rivers are drying. Lake Chad has shrunk by nearly 1/3. The rivers are drying. The climate is changing. The Sahara is coming down south. The rivers down are drying or getting polluted. Our farms are not yielding the way they were yielding before. Our seeds are being destroyed. Our young men and women are running away. And remember, the Germans are now saying, we want young people. The Canadians are saying, we want young people. We are in danger. You who have been trained in this institution, now go back to your countries and tell your countries that yes, there is a conspiracy against the continent of Africa, but the human relationship, is it not about conspiracy? Even in families, are there not conspiracies? Is it not our duty to fight and defeat those conspiracies so that that is no longer an excuse? Go out there and say that we have the possibilities and that these possibilities require and demand that we look at Africa as a total whole. Go out there in your little ways and make your contribution. The 78 of you who are graduating here today, I'm suggesting to you that development must start with you. Go back and let in every institution where you are, let it be said that since he came back from NISS, he or she is different. He is different in a positive way. And all of us who are here, whether we are politicians or academics and in different sectors, let us go out there having made a solemn vow that Africa must do it. If you can't do it for yourself, ask yourself which Nigeria you want to bequeath to your children and your children's children. You are here, maximum 40 years, you will have gone upstairs. But after 40 years, in which kind of country will you want your children to be? This is the question. It is not about you and me. It is about them. This is intergenerational. Africa must change. Africa can change. And it can only change if we change our minds. And our minds we must change. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much and God bless.
One thing that I like about PLO Lumumba is that in his first stances of speeches, one thing that he said, he talks about the importance of Africans recognizing shared history and culture and identity, because these are the mark benches of who we are. Our shared history, our culture, and our identity is Africans. This is what makes us people. And even to the new coming leaders, they need to understand that they should also embrace this. This is what the Western influence want to scrap away, because any moment they give Africans something, there is always something that they'll want to take. It can be something to do with our erosion of culture, and we have shared history as Africans, and it is time for we Africans to wake up and see these things for our eyes and know the right way and know the right things to do, and know that the only solution that we have as we Africans is to look beyond conspiracy and work together as Africans, choose new African leaders that can lead us directly to what we want, to choose the right path for us, because history has shown that we keep on complaining about the same things we as Africans. What if we just decided that now we want to take new leaders who understand the struggles of Africa, new leaders who their minds haven't been corrupted by the Western powers, you know what I'm saying? So this is what we Africans need. Professor Lumumba also says something which is important. Listen, Professor Lumumba discusses the impact of colonialism of Africa, including exploitation of resources and division of African territories. He highlights the struggles for independence. He highlights the struggles for independence and the need to celebrate African heroes who fought for freedom. That's what we need to do as Africans. In as much as we are having new African leaders, of course we need them. But we also need to recognize the place that some great African leaders have played in the plight of now the development, or some things that we are witnessing, such as development in Africa. Those little things, they might not be little, but they might seem little today because most of we Africans today, we are forgetting about our history. But let's keep the great things that our ancestral leaders did to us. You know very well the legends of your country. We are Africa with 54 countries. You know very well the legends, the people who fought for independence of your country. We don't need to forget them because they remind us that we should still stick and fight even in present day, everything which is happening across us, everything which is happening around us in Africa. There is something with leadership and accountability that we need to talk about. Leadership and accountability comes in this sense. Earlier African leaders, I'm not saying all of them, but African leaders who are there before, Mostly they acted as puppets, and they accepted the deals that they were given by these people. And who did suffer? It is an African who suffered. African children suffered. A lot of children don't get the school fees to go to school. A lot of children don't get things to do. Some of them end up not going to school, because some things are happening in Africa that they don't want you to know. This includes one, erosion of our cultures. The African child pays this in this sense. You have to do something for the government for you to get something. And Professor PLO Lumumba said it so clearly. Most of these things, it is the Africans who paid. That's why we need accountable African leaders. Accountable African leaders, we're going to find them through the new leaders who are coming into the seats. The new Guinea, the new Senegal president who was just recently confirmed the African youngest president. These are the youngest people who are the face of Africans. We're talking about Ibrahim Traore. These are the youngest face of African leaders that we need. People who are so resilient, people who are so visionary of Africa, people who knows the African values and knows that this is what Africans need to have for us to thrive well as Africans. So we need accountable leaders. We need leaders who have the true plan for Africa. We need leaders who understand the pain of African children. We need Africans, we need African presidents who understands the real struggle of what an African goes through. There is also one thing that I would like to say. This is economic empowerment. This is something that Professor PLO Lumumba have always been saying in his videos. It's not something like it's new. It's not something like it's just happening. But this is something that he has been saying in his videos. Make Africa bigger by investing in Africa's economy. Buying from our own products, dealing with our own selves, everything that we want. Let us provide it for ourselves. We have the potential. We have the manpower. So if we decide to make Africa big in terms of economic, our economic independence as Africans, we are not, because we have the mineral sources that we can just decide that we want to do our own thing. We can decide to have our own currency as Africans, And it talks about a number of things of African economic growth. And this includes some things to do with our mineral resources, how we can control them. African leaders have to have a say on the natural resources which are being produced in the African continent. They need to have a say in those things because those are the source of wealth. Vast things which are being created back in the western part of Europe, or Europe generally, is the mineral resources that African has. That's what is being used to develop the Europe. So we can decide to become economically independent by having a say in our resources. New African leaders, this is a message to you. You need to have total control. Don't let a foreigner come to our country. They start controlling how we should do our resources. The manpower that we need with our resources, we don't need that. You know what I'm saying? So we need to stand strong and say that, no, we're not doing that. We want to make our Africa big. We want to make our Africa great. So let's make Africa great. You know what I'm saying? So invest in your own economy. Stop him. If you know a person who manufactures things locally, that's where we start from. We start from home. Charity begins at home. That's the way they say. So think about it. Think about everything that PLO Lumumba said about the future of Africa, economic development, economic independence, education. There are a number of things that PLO Lumumba said that if the new African leaders who are just occupying the seats needs to understand, and I hope that they lead Africa the right way. And as I told you, the future is in young and vibrant African presidents, and the journey has just begun. So it's a good message for Africans. Let me see you in the next video. Until then, peace, love, and harmony. Salute.